After writing and doing some videos about my experience of my grandfather's stroke and cardiac arrest 20 years ago, which was mainly that half of him died when he had those events, and he was forever changed. And it was hard. It was hard on us. It was hard on him. I talked to my grandma last week, and she talked about a lot of the good things, which was good to hear. She had a different story of it. I felt bad, like mine was a little bit negative, or remembered a lot of the pain instead of the joys and the good things and a lot of the good things that came of it. So I talked to my dad, and I was like, I wonder what his story still is of this time. And my grandfather had atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat, and he also had IHSS, subaortic stenosis. His heart was enlarged in part, and so he had and I think he may have had a valve problem. He had compounded a lot of risk to throw clots from his heart to his brain and to have a stroke, where a clot forms in the heart, and then because of the irregular heartbeat, because of the structure and shape of his heart, little blood would kind of swirl in a way that it would form a clot and shoot off to his brain. My dad said he was in the ER like 20 times with strokes, and he would get treated with clot busters, and most of the time he was okay. My grandfather started to change when he was a big pilot. He loved to fly. He flew under the arch. Legend. When he got atrial fibrillation, when he got this irregular heartbeat, and he had a risk for stroke, and he had to go on Coumadin for blood thinners, he couldn't fly anymore. And that was like his favorite thing in life. And that was really hard. He was a little depressed over that. I remember when he went from flying to having these airplanes, flying these big model airplanes, and he got into that, and his passion went from flying real, he was a commercial pilot, to flying model planes. But subsequently he had a big stroke, and then this cardiac arrest, and after that he really wasn't the same. His personality changed. He had memory problems. He had a form of dementia from strokes, not Alzheimer's, but he could tell you what happened 20 years ago, but he couldn't tell you what he ate for breakfast. He had some additional weakness in his extremities, difficulty walking, speech, difficulties with speaking, and his personality globally changed as well. And my dad was telling me stories about he would forget where he lived, and he went to his old house that he built. He had somebody drop him off there mistakenly instead of the house that he actually lived in. He tried to break in, tried to use his keys to get in there. I mean, it's like funny hearing the story, but then it's also very sad how memory loss, how these medical problems and diseases affect people and really change their lives. And that's not for the better. I don't want to sugarcoat it. This is, I don't think he did anything wrong in life in some shame sense of his own medical condition and how he took care of himself, but the consequences of these diseases were devastating to him and I think to the family. He would get confused. He would think when he was watching TV that he was flying the Kansas Jayhawks around and that he just had lunch with Bill Clinton, and again, it was funny but hard to see this man. He couldn't work anymore, so he kind of had to confront. The guy loved to work. He was in real estate, and part of what happened after the stroke was some of his inhibitions were lost. So he did this anyway. You know, he would tell people to off. He thought they were an asshole. He told them, and he really, that got worse after this, so he got fired. He couldn't work anymore, unfortunately. That was hard for a man who had worked for 40 years, his whole life. This happened in his late 60s. What else did my dad say? I think this is the quote that I remember my dad saying. He said, if he couldn't do it with his hair on fire, he didn't want to do it. And I think one of the takeaways of the story that my dad tells is how the kind of person my grandfather was an intense type A. He was an extreme guy, but he lived life. Didn't do drugs, no substance use, not crazy stuff like that, but the guy lived, and I don't think my dad thinks that he would have wanted to live the way that he was. He changed after his strokes and cardiac arrest. His personality changed. He was a mellow dude. He was no longer type A. And that guy lived for whatever it was, 10 or 15 years. In that changed, but, God, I mean, I struggle even labeling this. Disabled, debilitated, those are true labels. Mellower. I think there's a lot of loss there that I don't want to tiptoe around. You can see I'm struggling with even how I'm describing this, but there was loss for him and for all of us, and this was life, and we came together and we all slam the brakes. We came together and we all did our best. Grams was thankful for the family, Everybody kind of pitched in and did what they could, and anyway, it doesn't change my memory of the times where I tried everything I could to get the guy to have a good time and to connect with him and to reach out and to get through, the layers and the limitations of the new guy post-stroke. And I don't know. That's what you do when you love them. You do what you can, and still miss the guy for sure. Okay, what else? Did my dad say anything else that I wanted to contribute to that? If he couldn't do it with his hair on fire, he didn't want to do it. That's a quote. I'm gonna make a quote out of that. I don't think I've ever heard that before. I think that's all I'm going to say right now.